You need to have the hands-on, face-to-face, person-to-person activities that supplement and complement what you're doing with the technology. And the key is having the right face-to-face activities. All face-to-face hands-on activities are not created equally.
Hello there. My name is Monica Burns, and welcome to today's bonus episode of the Easy EdTech podcast. If you're used to joining me on Tuesdays for new episodes, you are in for a treat. This is a special bonus episode of the podcast in partnership with KEVA Planks. Just like on Tuesdays, these bonus episodes are designed to give you ideas you can try yourself, share with a colleague, or bookmark for later in the school year. If we mention something you'd like to check out, you'll find the link to it in the show notes. So don't forget to head to my website, easyedtechpodcast.com, for all of the links and resources from today's episode. This episode is sponsored by KEVA Planks, the simple wooden building blocks that unleash creativity and deepen learning. Whether you're teaching STEM, social studies, or collaboration skills, KEVA makes it easy to create hands-on learning experiences your students will never forget. With ready-to-use lesson plans and standards-aligned activities, KEVA helps students connect, create, and problem-solve, all without screens. You can explore more at kevaplanks.com and stay tuned for a special offer just for listeners at the end of the episode. That's KEVA, K-E-V-A, planks.com. Today's episode is titled How to Bring Hands-On Learning into a Digital Classroom, and it was so much fun chatting with Dr. Ken Scheel, the founder and Chief Education Officer at KEVA Planks, and Whitney Beck, Associate Principal at Colonial Trail Elementary School. We talk about the balance between hands-on and digital experiences and the importance of building future-ready skills. Let's jump into the conversation. All right. Well, welcome, Ken and Whitney, to the podcast. I'm so excited to have you both here to talk about bringing hands-on learning experiences into a digital classroom. But before we get into all of that, would love for you both to share a bit about your role in education. What does your day-to-day look like?
Whitney, why don't you go first?
Hi, I'm Whitney Beck. I am an associate principal in Henrico County Public Schools, which is a county just north of Richmond, if you're looking geographically to find us. This is my 21st year in education. It's my fourth as an administrator. I spent 17 years in elementary school education as a kindergarten first and third grade classroom teacher the longest. Day to day is hard to pin down. Some days I am in cafeteria duty. Some days I am walking with students, giving much needed breaks. Some days I am meeting with parents and students. I'm supporting instruction. I'm doing classroom observations. Some days I'm planning big events for the whole county. I'm getting poured into for my own professional learning. Every day is different.
And my name's Ken Scheel. I'm the founder of the KEVA Planks company, and I'm the CEO, the Chief Education Officer. So I've been at it long enough now that I just do the things I like, and other people do all the other day-to-day things. And so that means that I develop new products. I'm a toy inventor, and I also, one of my passions is helping teachers to add more hands-on activities to their classrooms to make their teaching more engaging. So I teach professional training workshops and museums and that sort of thing, how to be more playful and how that makes learning better and more effective, more enjoyable for everybody.
Well, I am just pumped to have both of you here today with your variety and depth of experience around this topic to really dive into what it means to explore this intersection of technology and hands-on learning, which you both kind of alluded to, right, is a part of your role. So in your experiences, how does pairing digital tools with tactile experiences help students build a deeper, more lasting understanding of what they're learning?
Well, you have to have both. And so if you lean too much in either direction, you have difficulties. People tend to remember things we do, especially things we do with our hands. And so if you're trying to teach something or reinforce something, if the hands and body become physically involved with it, students are more likely to retain whatever it is that you're wanting them to listen. I often talk about it making the information sticky where it stays with them. And if you're in the tech world, and a lot of schools spend a lot of time with the screens and the digital technology. And if you go too far on that, it can get toxic. You just have too much of that. And we've seen some of that with the anxious generation and that sort of thing. So you need to have the hands-on, face-to-face, person-to-person activities that supplement and complement what you're doing with the technology. And the key is having the right face-to-face activities. All face-to-face hands-on activities are not created equally.
The only thing that I would add to that in terms of, student life is, thinking about that stickiness that we talk about, the Velcro of the mind. And when students are engaged in digital learning, it creates a lot of one side of the Velcro in the mind. But if we don't give them something else to put up against it, then it's just a lot of visualization. It's a lot of abstract learning, and they don't know what to connect it to. And so once we give them that, this is how that thing that you learned on the computer, on that very specific tool that you used, this is how it looks in real life, or this is how it was used in history. This is how scientists used it. And then they get the chance to use that information in a real way. That's when it actually becomes meaningful. So you have to be really careful that the tools that you're using, both with your hands and digitally, are purposeful.
Yes. And just that emphasis that you both placed on high quality experiences, right? Like we're vetting tools of when listeners might be used to that from a digital perspective too, right? Like we review these things, we look to see what's a great fit and what we can use with intention. So as many educators think about how to help students become future ready, right? Or build these future ready skills, what are some of the most important skills students need, and how can combining ed tech with real world hands-on challenges help kids develop those skills?
Well, I seem like most people have kind of broken it down into a short list, talking about resilience, problem solving, collaboration or teamwork, and empathy. Those seem to be some of the big four that end up on most people's lists, and I would agree with those. And most of those are people to people related, and they're very human emotions and resilience, the ability to get back up after something's hard and hasn't worked out and to keep going, collaboration or teamwork. You can't learn collaboration and teamwork without collaborating and working with another human being. You have to be face to face. And we do the best we can, like right now doing this as a Zoom call, and that works. And especially as adults, we've had so much life experience with face-to-face, we kind of understand those things. But the students coming up that are young, that this is the world they've come into, they're jumping straight to the digital and missing so much of the human-to-human contact. And so the empathy of trying to read the subtlety of how other people are responding to you and all those things, you cannot get to those things by screen and digital. It has to be face-to-face and hands-on with activities that are non-threatening, that bring people together. And there's a lot of, I have sort of a list of those sorts of things that for an activity to be good, to accomplish those sorts of things.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. We talk a lot about those skills as well. People call them life ready. We think about them as those durable skills, the skills that are not just going to get them to the next grade level, but that are going to make them, positive contributing members of their communities, whatever their communities will be in the future. And just like Ken said, we know that they need to be prepared for whatever the digital future is. So we can't just keep doing what we've always done because we know that worked. But we also know that throwing them too far down that digital path misses out on why are we doing the digital things that we are doing. And we see that day to day. I mean, our kids, they can create a Google Doc and they can share Google Doc and they can communicate like it's nobody's business until they are communicating like it is nobody's business. And then they have to learn how to go back and deal with the real ramifications of not knowing how to communicate back and forth in real life and understand that the words that I typed when I was at home and mad at my best friend in 4th grade actually mean something real to that other person. And even though I just say, oh, I'm just kidding, you can't put that toothpaste back in that tube anymore. And so really having that understanding, and something that happened recently in 4th grade was that there was this huge, well, to a 4th grader, huge blow up of Google Doc sharing. And so the teacher said for 1 week, there will be only access to computers for assignments. And that is it. And something beautiful has come out of it where the students are actually talking to one another and learning how to make eye contact and learning how to shake hands with one another, or, those simple things that people who lived before there were cell phones in our hands knew how to do are now learning it, in real time. And so that idea of knowing that it's something that they need to be taught, it makes us almost stop and go back and say, oh, they have to be taught how to critically think. They're not going to do it on their own. So we have to then build the scaffolds so that they can make mistakes. And so thinking about KEVA especially, knowing that if a child has never had to be a risk taker and make mistakes in building a huge tower, and then if it falls over, to know it's not the end of the world, it's okay. And I can let it fall over and then assess what went wrong. How can I do it again? And then try again and see success. And to know that that doesn't come from coming from a certain background or having a certain amount of money, that comes from that grit, and that has to be built over time. You are born with that necessarily. And so these hands-on tools, these KEVA especially, are a way that anybody can enter into these durable skills on the same playing field.
And jump back in, Ken.
And the only way that you can grow resilience is you have to have that tower fall periodically. So something unexpected happens and you can come back from that. If you're protected from that, if nothing ever physically falls in your life. And so if we can be doing activities where it is very low risk, if something falls down, everybody recognizes it's not a big deal. It's only going to take us 5 more minutes to rebuild this. So it doesn't escalate it. And the idea that you can have a setback and then keep going becomes just a normal part of life. But you need to have things that you're doing that are on that bar of being easy and non-threatening to do.
And you both, emphasize just how this is a foundation for all sorts, right, of life experiences and would transfer into those digital spaces, of course, right, that we understand students of all ages will be expected to interact with, but it really helps build that foundation that they're then going to continue, right, to expand on, right, after an activity like this. And, I'd love for us to build, right, on some of those skills that you both just mentioned, when we say future ready or STEM, right? This is often associated with screens and simulations. But, what role does screen-free, hands-on learning play in building STEM skills? Here we're thinking now about experimentation, problem solving, iteration, as we kind of add to our list of things we hope kids will strengthen.
Well, sure. If you look at experimentation, we do experiments to find out what is going to happen in real life. We think in our mind what might happen. We think in a simulation what might happen. But we do an experiment to find out what really happens when you do this. And to do that, you have to do it physically in real life. And with KEVA Planks, our product, you start stacking them, you start leaning them over the side, and you realize, wait a minute, if I push it too far over, it's going to fall over. I need a counterweight on that. And so you start learning about fulcrum points and counterbalances and all that sort of thing while you're playing. You don't even need to know the terms, but you start to learn those. You're doing lots of micro experiments as you're building, and you find out what happens to the critical center of gravity. If you're building that tall tower that Whitney was talking about, and it starts to go crooked, eventually it's going to fall. And why is that? That's an experiment on center of gravity. And so for experiments, experimenting becomes a part of daily life as you're tinkering with things like that. And then the other thing that you mentioned was iteration. And that's sort of innovators and inventors talk about iteration a lot, knowing that we never make it the best our first time. There's always things that we discover after we make the first prototype or model that we can improve that and try to build that mindset into students so that they know that the first time they do this, the first time they build a ship out of KEVA planks, it's going to just look generally like a ship. But if they do it again, they're going to get better and better, and it'll look more realistic. If you're writing a paper, your rough draft isn't that great, but your second draft, it improves, and so you improve it. So that concept rolls all the way through all of education. Is such a foundational concept for people to get. And if you're doing it with something as simple and quick as like our KEVA planks, you can build things simple, and then you can rebuild it again. And next week you could do that, and you feel and see that progression of, hey, this looks a lot better this time I made it than last time. I learned all these different things. And so those things, you need to do them, especially at a young age for a student, to experience that firsthand, that as I do this, I'm going to get better and better at it, and my project is going to look better and better. And so you have to do those things done physically, embed in the brain and the person more so than sort of a theoretical digital experience. So that's part of what you get by doing it for real with your hands with another person.
Thinking about iterations, we've partnered with the Scheel family and KEVA for 3 years. Next year will be 4, to create this huge KEVA event in Henrico, where we have students who are on teams from all over our county come and compete in teams. And in thinking about just the first iteration, from that first year to this past year, location change, the goal of our event changed, who we really targeted to come has changed. And just modeling that iteration mindset of, okay, we think this is what we were going to do, hypothesis, we made a plan, we executed the plan, we measured the outcomes, we asked for feedback, and then we revised the next year. We are modeling through our own planning what that experimentation, that problem solving looks like, and it's gotten better every time. And I think the most important thing that we have communicated as a county to our students is that it's still not the best, because we're still working on making it better. And even if next year is amazing, there will still be something that we want to change to make it even better. And that idea of iteration, it is a driving force, but I will say that is a hard thing for most students to really get behind, because, we are driven by a curriculum in our Commonwealth, and that curriculum is based on mastery as opposed to iteration at times. And so it is a challenge for educators to really find that balance between, I know that my students need multiple opportunities to practice this to demonstrate mastery, but also a mastery for a 9-year-old, for a 5-year-old isn't really appropriate. We should be seeing that they are going through that practice of trying new things, getting it wrong, revising, observing, and then trying it again, and then noting where they improved. And while KEVA is screen free, I would say it is low tech, but it is not no tech, because it definitely stretches children's thinking.
And, you both placed, these skills alongside one another, right? Complementary skill building, whether it's the iteration component, the resilience piece. just creativity and that face-to-face collaboration and all the ways that it can transfer to different learning experiences kids might have, right, with or without devices. So you've seen KEVA Planks used in all sorts of classrooms. Can you share some specific examples where educators have successfully integrated these hands-on building experiences into their lessons?
Sure. I was just speaking with an fourth grade elementary teacher last week, and excuse me, their school they do like major segments that they study ancient civilization for a long period of time, and then they do sort of Middle Ages, and then they do modern or colonial history, American history. And every year when they're doing ancient history, they build the Great Wall of China. They have a lot of KEVA planks, and they do that as a group. And if one group comes in and they only get it 5 feet across the room, the next group comes in and keeps building on it until it gets all the way across the room. And they can talk about why it was built so it was wide enough so 10 soldiers could march shoulder to shoulder to get people from place to place, and all the things that come with the Great Wall of China. But they get to experience that building. It's a collaborative experience. It's a big thing that they look forward to doing. And this school happens to have a lot of KEVA planks, and they pull them into one room so they can do all this sort of big time activity. And then when they're doing later history, the thing is they come and they build castles, and castles come in all kinds of shapes. So there's all the room for creativity. You can build small castles by yourself. You can build giant castles with other people. And then when they get to American history, they build settlements, they build forts, they build railroads and things like that. So that's just one example. We have a long list. We've been doing this for over 20 years of finding ways to use KEVA planks in a hands-on way to teach almost any subject a teacher might be teaching. If you're learning plants and botany, you're making flowers. If you're doing history, you're building settlements. If you're doing architecture, you're building bridges and skyscrapers. So there's just so many different ways. We've thought of those. We've developed and collected those ideas from teachers for years. So it's just an unlimited supply of ways that you can do that, of connecting it, hands-on learning with KEVA planks into lessons, virtually any lesson a teacher might be teaching.
We see a lot of model building for our younger students, especially, build something that's related to George Washington. So then students are learning how to build that little tree without it falling over. Mm-hmm. But then there's also the idea of, why did certain things work the way that they did? So thinking about civilizations, thinking about, the aqueducts, why were the aqueducts used and how did they work? So not just what is it, but why? And how do you know? And so thinking about leveraging weight and water up above a city, and the idea of it sloping down from the mountains. And so physically building it, kind of like the Great Wall of China, but physically building it using books in the classroom and book bags, and trying to see how it actually would have worked on a much smaller level. But then also thinking about Virginia studies, one of the big things in Virginia studies is understanding how the geography of Virginia impacted the way that certain battles of the Revolutionary War and the Civil War were fought, and who won, and all of that. And so sometimes just the mere practice of having a map on the ground and using the KEVA planks to show the battle lines, or show where certain, they could actually see it as opposed to just little lines. It helps them understand, oh, well, look at all of the way that this arc was over here. And as the North came around, they're able to understand, and you see right. Well, so they're able to understand the why behind things, as opposed to just, I made this, because they will make a scene all day long. I mean, if we just let them be free, you can't stop them with KEVA. I mean, they want to build a ball run and they want to do this, but the connection, I think, is when you really see light bulbs and sparks.
Yeah, just that connection to learning. Go ahead, Ken. Mm-hmm.
I was going to say the walk through geography that Whitney was describing. That's one of my favorite things, because you can take just a totally empty room, and with whatever the theme is, whether it's history or building an ideal community or battlefield, whatever that is, they're totally immersed in it, and they start to get, especially with geography in your state or whatever, an idea of positioning, and you can build different aspects of whatever you're doing. And as you walk around, especially if you built villages, you feel like you're flying in an airplane because you walk around and just see things from a different perspective. And it's always fun to watch students. Each one is kind of working on their own little project, and how quickly that transforms to they look around and they see, oh my goodness, look at what the room has just become in the last 10 minutes. And that's always exciting for both teachers and me and students to see how much can happen in a very short amount of time.
Yeah, and just for kids who are in the flow, right? Like you mentioned, and then they might kind of take that bird's eye view and connect to, oh, wow, I didn't think of it this way or that way. And those variety of perspectives all connected back, right, to that intention and that learning goal, right, that a teacher might have. So, as we unpack this together today, right, I'm going to link out for listeners to all sorts of resources so they can dive in and learn more about KEVA Planks, of course. But for someone who might be on the move and like making a mental note as they listen to a podcast, where can listeners go to learn more, to grab classroom resources, or connect with the KEVA Planks team?
KEVAPlanks.com is the motherlode of everything KEVA Planks. And one thing to know about is KEVA Planks is sold on Amazon and school suppliers and many places, but all of our very best teacher resource materials that we've developed over years for teachers are almost all of them are sole source and only available from us. And so we've been, as I said, creating and collecting ideas from feedback from teachers for so many years. We have so many ideas that if you are thinking about getting KEVA Planks, or if you get them, you don't have to reinvent the wheel and think, oh, now what am I going to do with them? We've strategically made it so it's very easy. It's mostly based on open-ended challenges, like see if you can build a bridge. And that's all we have to say, and you've got a half-hour activity. So most of the things we do are built around that sort of thing. And most of those are very best stuff we keep to ourselves. And so if you want the best stuff, come to us. And also we're on all the main social medias and YouTube. We have just so many YouTube videos that show lots of new ways to build. And so those are really fun ways for teachers to see sort of the scope of what you can build. And also for students we have tutorials there so they can learn more advanced ways of building, because you can go from a kindergartner building the most simple things to college engineering students building the most incredible things. And it really does span that whole spectrum.
And I will make sure to link out so folks can find the landing page, all of these great resources. Ken and Whitney, thank you so much for your time today and helping unpack a big topic for listeners.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much.
It was lots of fun chatting with Whitney and Ken today. So let's make this EdTech easy with a few key points from the episode. Hands-on learning makes digital concepts more meaningful and easier to remember. Combining tactile and digital tools helps students build lasting, sticky understanding. Skills like collaboration, empathy, and resilience are best developed through face-to-face activities. Students need opportunities to fail safely, reflect, and try again to grow problem-solving skills. Remember, you can find the show notes and full list of resources from this episode by heading to easyedtechpodcast.com. That's where you'll find all the ways to connect with the team at KEVA Planks too. A big thank you to KEVA Planks for sponsoring this episode. Ready to bring more hands-on creative learning into your classroom? Head to kevaplanks.com/Monica to download a free building activity lesson plan and get 10% off your order. Be sure to go directly to kevaplanks.com/Monica to access these great offers. Happy building. If you're listening to the podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or Maybe you have another favorite app that you like to listen to. Make sure to use the follow button right now as you're listening to this episode. When you follow along with the podcast, every new episode that comes through the Easy Ed Tech podcast feed is going to download for you automatically. That way you don't miss a thing. And if you have a moment and are feeling extra helpful today, please leave a rating or review for the podcast. It helps other educators find episodes like this one when they're searching for topics like hands-on learning or future-ready skills, or really anything around education technology. Have a great week. Thanks for your support, and check back on Tuesday morning for next week's new episode.